All right. Well, speaking of other briefers, in a short while, I will be joined by our guest, the Deputy Executive Director of UNAIDS, Anjali Ashrakar. She will be here to brief you in advance of the launch of the World's AIDS Day report entitled Let Communities Lead. Just continue with our programming notes. Tomorrow, we will be joined virtually by two colleagues from UNRWA. Thomas White, the director of UNRWA's affairs in Gaza, and he will be briefing from Gaza, and Juliet Touma, the director of communications of UNRWA, and they will both be updating you on the situation in Gaza and the wider region on the humanitarian front. Then tomorrow at 1 p.m., Dennis Francis, the president of the General Assembly of these United Nations, will be here to talk to you about his forthcoming visit to the United Arab Emirates to take part in COP number 28. Back to this afternoon at 2:40, the Secretary General and Moussa Faki, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, will be here to speak to you. They will make remarks and take questions. Mr. Faki is here today because this is the day of the 7th African Union UN Annual Conference, and it's got underway this morning and is currently ongoing. And we will have French, English, and English-French interpretation for that. Back to Gaza. UNRWA yesterday continued to deliver fuel to Gaza's main water plant, which in turn distributed to water and sanitation facilities in the south. Supplies of potable water in the south via two pipelines coming from Israel has been continuing. Our colleagues in the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that the humanitarian pause agreed upon by Israel and Hamas has been largely maintained on November 27th for the fourth consecutive day. This has enabled humanitarian actors, primarily the Egyptian and Palestinian Red Crescent societies, along with various UN agencies, to enhance the delivery of assistance into and across Gaza. Yesterday, dozens of UNRWA and Palestinian Red Crescent Society aid trucks reached areas north of Wadi Gaza. The assistance included medical supplies, ready-to-eat food, wheat flour, bottled water, tents, and blankets, which were delivered to 4 UNRWA shelters and 3 main warehouses for subsequent distribution. The aid also included small amounts of fuel delivered to water production facilities to work for their reactivation following the completion of repairs. Meanwhile, in southern parts of Gaza, UNRWA has continued distributing wheat flour to internally displaced people in and outside shelters. To enable addressing the immense scope of needs, aid groups have called for the immediate reopening of more crossing points, including for the return and entry of commercial goods into Gaza. Our humanitarian partners have increased efforts to educate people also about the dangers of unexploded ordnance. This includes the training of trainers, holding in-person information sessions for IDPs in shelters, sharing posters, and of course, sending text messages. These actions have become more urgent with the ongoing pause because more people are now moving through areas which may be contaminated by unexploded ordnances. The Secretary General will speak tomorrow at the Security Council's meeting on the situation in the Middle East, and the Deputy Secretary General will be representing the Secretary General at the annual observance of the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, which is tomorrow. Back here in the Security Council this morning, the Council held a meeting on Syria. They heard from the Deputy Special Envoy from Syria, Najat Roshdi, who told Security Council members that there is an urgent need for de-escalation in Syria and across the region, that all actors, Syrian and non-Syrian, must exercise maximum restraint. On the political track, she confirmed that the Office for the Special Envoy continues to seek further engagement with all relevant stakeholders, and the proposals for step confidence-building measures already proposed, as well as further ideas in that regard. Also briefing on the humanitarian situation was Edem Wosurnu, the director of OCHA's Operations and Advocacy Branch. She said that 5.7 million men, women, and children across Syria need critical assistance to help them through the cold winter months. Inadequate shelter, lack of proper heating, and insufficient clothing and household items are among their most pressing needs. OCHA is doing what it can to meet and prioritize those needs, she underscored, but is facing a significant 70% shortfall in the funds required to deliver support. And also related to the oncoming winter in the Northern Hemisphere, in Ukraine, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that the first heavy snowfall is now hampering the provision of vital support to frontline communities. Our partners on the ground are unable to reach impacted communities as the main roads connecting Odessa to other regions are blocked. According to national authorities, as of 27th November, 10 people had reportedly died and dozens have been injured. More than 560 locations in 10 oblasts across the country were without power due to severe snow and wind. At the same time, local authorities report continued hostilities in the center and south of Ukraine, which resulted in civilian casualties and had damaged schools and apartment buildings. Despite these challenges, humanitarian organizations continue to deliver assistance across the country, including to people close to the front lines. Since January, they have reached over 10 million people with assistance. And a little bit of good news in a sea of usually bad news from Sudan. Our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that the first cross-border humanitarian shipment facilitated by the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs made it from Chad to North Darfur's capital Al-Fasher. It arrived there over the weekend on Sunday. The shipment carried medical and nutritional supplies from the NGO Relief International, and these supplies will support more than 185,000 men, women, and children. And just to note that on the 23rd of November, our partners also reached the central Darfur state in a convoy carrying medical supplies from Kosti in White Nile State for the first time since the fighting broke out in April. The convoy had set out on October 18th, so it took from October 18th to November 23rd to reach its destination due to the ongoing insecurity and continued fighting. Heading south to South Sudan in Juba today, our friend Nicholas Haysom, the special representative for the Secretary General, head of the peacekeeping mission there, addressed the annual Governors Forum, where he noted that the basic security needs of South Sudanese citizens remained unmet and that civilians were bearing the brunt of intercommunal violence, particularly outside Juba. He welcomed the deployment of the first batch of the necessary unified forces to Upper Nile State and reaffirmed the UN peacekeeping mission's support to the transitional government in its effort to protect civilians. While sharing concerns about the continued proliferation of arms, Mr. Haysom reiterated his support for a comprehensive national program for disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration, and he further underlined UNMISS's support for the governors in fostering national cohesion as South Sudan heads into elections in 2024. And a new harrowing report from our colleagues in Haiti today details the shocking rise in gang violence in the country as criminal gangs forge alliances and expand to rural areas previously considered safe. Killing, raping, kidnapping, and destroying property, among other abuse, are being attributed to these criminal gangs. The report focuses on the Bas-Artibonite district located in central Haiti, about 100 kilometers from Port-au-Prince, which has seen a significant rise in gang violence in the last 2 years. Between January 2022 and October 2023, at least 1,694 people were killed, injured, or kidnapped in that province alone. The report documents criminal groups rampaging through rival villages, quote-unquote rival villages, executing local people, using sexual violence against women and even very young children. The groups also loot farmers' properties and crops and livestock and destroy irrigation canals, contributing to the displacement of more than 22,000 people from their villages and significantly reducing the amount of cultivated land, heightening food insecurity. Volker Turk, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, warned that across Haiti, at least 3,960 people have been killed, 1,432 injured, and 1,832 kidnapped in gang-related violence this year. And lastly, UNHCR announced today their annual UNHCR Nansen Refugee Awards Global Laureate, and that is Abdullahi Mire. Mr. Mire is a former refugee and journalist who's championed the rights to education while putting 100,000 books in the hands of refugee children in Kenya. Born in Somalia, he grew up in the Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya and eventually resettled to Norway, but a yearning to serve his community drew him back. He found work in Kenya as a journalist and set up the Refugee Youth Education Hub, which is a refugee-led organization that has opened 3 libraries in the camps, stocked with donated books, and expanded learning opportunities for tens of thousands of displaced children and youth. We congratulate him, of course, and several regional winners will also be honored this year. The award will be presented in Geneva at the Global Refugee Forum 2023 on December 13th of the year 2023. I will take questions before I ask our guests to rescue me. Deji, and then Ms. Bashir.
Hi, Steph. First couple of questions on the Gaza situation. Today, the ambassador of Palestine in the GA Hall mentioned that he urged the international community to recognize Palestine as a member, not an observer of the United Nations. On this issue, what's the position of the Secretariat?
It's the same that it's always been. The process for admitting an entity into full membership of the UN is one that is firmly in the hands of member states and one that does not involve the Secretary General.
So just now you mentioned that the UN is urged for more border crossings to Gaza.
Yep.
I just want to know, do you have any, what efforts has the UN personnel have done in that?
This is something we've been advocating publicly. I mean, you heard the Secretary General speak about Karim Shalom yesterday. And this is something that we've been also advocating for in private conversations with the Israeli authorities as well as the U.S. and others.
And another thing is, during last weekend, we noticed that there were 3 students of the Palestinian descent got shot and injured in Vermont. What does the Secretary General has to say on this issue?
First of all, we condemn this violence. Obviously, this is still being investigated as to the motive. We wish all 3 of them a rapid recovery. I mean, while there is investigation still going on, I think the signs of hate are probably fairly apparent, and there is absolutely no room for any anti-Islam hate and bigotry and any other form of hate.
Okay, I'm going to ask 2 updates. First one is the appeal, the OCHA appeal, the 1.2 billion humanitarian appeal. How's that work?
I don't have the numbers with me, but as I've told you, I think, Deji,
I tried. I even donated, but I still cannot find the figure.
Okay, then we will help you find where your money went.
Yeah, really.
I won't ask you how much you donated, but we do appreciate your donation.
Second update. It's been quite some time since last time we heard the information of Yemen. The tanker.
Yes, it's a good question. We'll get you an update.
It's the transfer, I presume, has been finished for a long time.
I will get you an update as soon as I get one. Margaret, would you like to ask less than 5 questions?
I have 3. I'll go for 3. With the aid flowing in, Steph, are any hospitals that were sort of barely functioning / not functioning, are they reopening and scaling up again? Do you have any info on any of them?
That's a good question. I'll try to get you some information. Otherwise, I think our guests tomorrow will be able to answer that. But I'll try to get you some information.
And then you mentioned the distribution of wheat flour, it sounded like to IDPs. Is any going to bakeries? And now that there's fuel, are the bakeries reopened?
Yeah, I'll check with, I'll need to check with WFP on their bakeries. But obviously, one of the critical things that they needed was fuel to run the water, to get fresh water for the bakeries. So we hope some of those bakeries have now been reopened.
Okay. Okay, and then on the commercial goods, you were saying you want to get commercial goods
Yeah.
back in. So is that something that OCHA negotiates to happen,
Well, I mean,
or somebody else? Like, who handles commercial?
I mean, the entry of goods into Gaza is currently, I mean, has to be negotiated. I mean, from Rafah, it involves the Israelis and it involves obviously the Egyptians because it's on their border. Karim Shalom, it involves the Israelis. I mean, you know, there were hundreds and hundreds of trucks that went in every day into, I think 500 was the number I had into Gaza before this conflict happened. Most of it was commercial goods. I mean, there was an economy in Gaza, right? I mean, there was an import and export and agricultural products and all sorts of things. All of that has come to a standstill. So, you know, whether it's Gaza or any other place that suffers a humanitarian crisis, we need humanitarian aid to get in, but we also need life to restart, right? You need commercial life to restart. You need the economy to restart.
But I'm just confused on whose responsibility it is to negotiate that happening.
Well, I mean, I think it's something we should all, the
humanitarians do it?
international community should be advocating for, and that's what we are also advocating for. Stefano.
Thank you, Stéphane. Yesterday, the Secretary General and also Jean-Pierre Lacroix met the Minister of Defense of Italy, Crosetto. Did they, I know they talked about UNIFIL, but did the minister ask or propose the change of the rule of engagement for UNIFIL?
I think you need to ask our friends at the Italian mission what the Italians asked for. But and not to be, I don't want to be clever by half or a quarter. I don't have a readout of the meeting. I can always get a readout, but I can only speak to what we spoke about. Dennis.
In terms of additional crossings, does the UN has any estimates how much more aid could be delivered in Gaza if Kerem Shalom crossing is opened?
Obviously, we would have, if we had a second crossing, we would have a greater volume. You know, I don't know whether we'd be able to double it or not. I mean, but let me just put it this way: there are more trucks waiting to go in than are able to go in, you know, waiting to go in outside of Gaza than are able, that actually do go in every day. So if we had a second crossing, it's sort of basic physics, more would be able to go in. Okay, I will ask Angeli to come up and brief you on the World AIDS Day report.